Ashley Webster. So for more on this, let's bring in Aaron Cohen, Israeli special ops veteran and founder of Gideon, and Alex Gray, former National Security Council Chief of Staff. Alex, let's start with you. The last time it felt like the negotiations were going somewhere, maybe from the outside looking in, it felt like the impasse was over enriched uranium, how long they would, how much they would give up, how long they would put the program on the shelf. Could we be getting back to that pretty soon? Because it sounded today like Vice President Vance is pretty clear that the clock is much closer to midnight than many may expect.
Yeah, Charles, I think we're going to have a clear discussion where the Iranians can no longer delay on what to do with the highly enriched uranium and what to do with the nuclear program. It's almost as if the Iranians and maybe some domestic audiences are so not used to American politicians meaning what they say and saying what they mean that they can't even process that President Trump has said consistently since 2015 he will not tolerate an Iranian nuclear weapon. So we're doing exactly what the president has consistently said across both presidencies. And I think, Charles, where we're headed is the president he's got the blockade. He's had the American military rearming, getting ready in the region with our deployed forces. I think the president is now in a position where the Iranians have this opportunity to put up or shut up. And if not, I think the president is truly ready to re-engage kinetically.
Aaron, we're rearming and loading, getting reloaded, but if you read the New York Times, it sounds if you read the New York Times, it sounds like we did nothing. Everything that happened in Iran, they've rebuilt it, they've added to it, they're better prepared. And the only reason that we didn't attack was that they've gotten reconnaissance and help from Russia and China. And we can't surprise them anymore that we're actually the weaker link right now.
Well, that's why I don't read the New York Times. It's good to see you, Charles.
You too.
Let me back it up for a second. Let me set the table a little bit here. I think I need to reset everybody who may be watching. We have to understand where Iran was just weeks ago. Their proxy network degraded. Their strategic deterrence absolutely obliterated. Their key infrastructure hits across the board. Their air defense capability took existence. So the regime understands that the United States and Israel are willing to move farther than Tehran or the Middle East or the world ever expected. And so that changes the psychological battlefield completely. I want to make it clear. Iran is only at the table negotiating because of President Trump's leadership, vision, Israeli-generated intel with that U.S. muscle and might and tactical capability. And so the Trump, I think what happened was him saying, hey, we're just hours away. What he's doing is what he has always done throughout this campaign, which isn't just applying maximum pressure, it's maximum uncertainty. And that uncertainty, in my opinion, is the pressure. And so when the president says we're an hour away from strikes, that message isn't just for the U.S. That's for the IRGC, for Tehran, whatever supreme leader is running the show right now, the intelligence apparatus inside of Iran. And so you're one decision away from another strike package. And so I think that's going to force the regime to operate under that constant pressure and instability. And I really think we're just moments away from him dialing this up. That pressure, it seems, needs to come back, and it needs to come back within the next days. That's where I'm at.
So, Aaron, I'll ask you this as well, Alex, but Aaron, let me stick with you on this. The notion that you have odds within Iran, you've got, two factions there, but they do agree on one thing. They love what they've been able to achieve with the Strait. They like to use it as a money source, as a power source. Right. Are you buying that?
No, not. I mean, I'm buying that they love to use it as a power. Look, let me answer that. The regime is still the regime. And I think that's the part that people are forgetting. Nothing ideologically, in my opinion, or from my intelligence sources on the ground, tells me that anything has changed inside the Iranian regime. The IRGC is still the IRGC. They're going to use whatever they have with the Strait to keep creating that chaos and buy time. So they still want that regional dominance. They still want to project that. They just want to destabilize. And they still view America and Israel, and always will, as long-term adversaries. So the question is whether pressure can force temporary concessions. Right. I think we have to move back to kinetic operations. And that's the tactical pause that I think the president has been preparing for. He's not a dumb guy. He's very strategic. So I think we're going to see that start to re-kick. It's just a matter of days.
Alex, speaking of this, the kinetic pressure, last night the Wall Street Journal reports that we seized an oil tanker, an Iranian oil tanker, Skyway, 1 million barrels of oil on it. A lot of folks watching this saying, hey, if we're patient, it's cutting off their ability to transport their oil will ultimately break their economy, will crash their economy, could spark the uprising that many have been hoping for, and maybe we should be more patient with this. Your thoughts?
Look, I think that would work in a perfect world. The reality is, between U.S. domestic politics, the politics in our Asian and European allies, we don't have unlimited time. We don't have that level of patience. And I agree with Aaron's point. Going kinetic again in a targeted way against a regime that remains an implacable ideological foe of the U.S. and the West, that is probably where the president's going to have to be to execute the goals that he has been unambiguous about for a decade. No nuclear weapons, destroying the proxies, keeping Iran in its box in the Middle East. And as much as I think we'd all like to allow the U.S. Navy to do what it does well, execute this blockade, I just don't think that the timelines politically around the world and here are going to allow us to do that without a kinetic escalation like Epic Fury.
So, Alex, then the ultimate part of this, the last mile, so to speak, it's hard to get these speedboats. It's hard to get these folks encamped along the banks with drones. Will we have to ultimately have boots on the ground?
Look, I don't think we're going to have boots on the ground. I don't think that's, I don't think that's a direction the president's going to go. I think the president's been one of the most eloquent spokesmen over the last several decades for an American strategic focus on the Middle East that is not overcommitting, that takes into account the experiences we had in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think the president can accomplish the goals that he's trying to accomplish here, keep Iran contained, get the regime to operate within an American set of boxes of left and right bounds. He could do that without having to use boots on the ground.
Aaron, President Trump returned from China with reassurances from President Xi there with respect to Iran. How much faith do you have in that?
I think, I think the game was played. Everybody dumping their cell phones into bins. You got to be careful with China. China's got the most strategic interest here. It's about that oil. It's about that energy. And so I think President Trump is onto them. I think he's just going to continue to focus on this dangerous zone that we're in right now with Iran, keep it focused on that particular area of interest. Look, the biggest danger right now is psychological complacency. And the second China, Charles, starts convincing itself that this issue is solved and that the president and the U.S. and Israel backed into a corner, the regime gains operational breathing room. And I think President Trump knows that. So at the end of the day, I think what we're going to have to see here is that kinetic re-kick of the flame or the spark, right? Because the real goal is forcing that regime in a position where the cost of continuing to drag this thing out becomes higher than the cost of compromise. And I think that's what we're going to start inching ourselves towards here.